All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to What We Need to Succeed, PCC Student Advisory Council's perspective on campus supports. This is a panel discussion and launch event for this report. My name is Christian Perry, and I have the great privilege of serving as the Director of Policy and Advocacy here at the Partnership for College Completion. I want to thank everyone for being here to join this discussion, this new report, to go along with our podcast series. This student-led interview project features voices from PCC's 2022 and 2023 Student Advisory Council. And we're proud to share their work with you all today. And this project, we're especially proud, was funded by the grant funds we received from Crown Family Philanthropy. So we're very grateful for our support on that. I'll briefly go over the agenda. We'll kick off this event with a quick introduction to the partnership. I'll share a little bit of our history and our background. We'll talk a little bit about the history of the Student Advisory Council and how we're blessed to be able to engage with these young people throughout their journeys in college and learn from them. Then our policy analyst, Caitlin Power, will share an overview of the project's themes. And then our PCC student board member, Krista Brown, will moderate a panel with 3 Student Advisory Council members who participated in this project, Sabrina Hart, Isabella Hernandez, and Febe Frias. There'll be 10 minutes at the end of the discussion for attendees to ask questions of our phenomenal student panel. And then just so you all know, we'll have Lauren and Mike from PCC's team here who will be monitoring the chat for this meeting. And Jonathan Lopez is on hand for us to help with any tech issues that you might have. So if you're having any issues, please feel free to put it in the chat and we'll attend to those as quickly as we can. So about the partnership. The Partnership for College Completion is the only organization in Illinois solely focused on providing leadership on a systems level approach to support college completion and eliminate institutional inequities in higher education outcomes. Since our founding, PCC has helped usher in a new and urgent conversation on higher education equity in the state. Launched in 2016, PCC has quickly become the go-to source for higher education institutions, advocates, and local and state leaders because of its distinctive place in the ecosystem with organizations working on college completion. PCC lives out the partnership in its name. We convene, we support, and we work hand in hand with partners and other organizations to advance and tackle the historically marginalized Illinoisans within our higher education system. As a result of our organizational action and a confluence of support factors in the Illinois policy environment, PCC has begun to see significant changes in a relatively short time that the organization has been in operation. To date, there is a growing awareness to a more nuanced discussion around equity in college completion. Our focus is on ensuring that every Illinois student has equitable access to a college education at an institution that supports their academic and career plans, regardless of their race, family income, wealth, or any other factor. So with that, I'll pass it over to our incredibly capable, the leader on this project, Caitlin Power, to talk more about the Student Advisory Council and the report. Caitlin.
Thanks, Christian, and just like a huge thanks to everyone who came out to this event, and thanks to our student panelists. Can't wait to hear from you all later. My name's Caitlin, as Christian mentioned. I'm the policy analyst here at PCC and part of the research and data team. And want to just give a quick intro to what the Student Advisory Council is and does. Our SAC is a cohort of current Illinois college students from a mix of public and private 2- and 4-year institutions across the state of Illinois. And PCC's work with the SAC represents a few really important opportunities. First, it's a place for the partnership to hear directly from students about their college experiences and work to align our policy and practice with student needs. It's also a space where we seek to facilitate leadership opportunities for SAC members and support students in developing a framework for engaging in these different aspects of policy and advocacy work. So that's some of what we do with the Advisory Council. And in terms of the interview project that our conversation today will focus on, was taken on by our Student Advisory Council this past year in 2022 and 2023, where the SAC spent their spring semester leading an interview project where students decided what they wanted interviews to focus on, developed interview questions to ask other students, and then actually led and participated in interviews with Student Advisory Council members. They also brainstormed different possibilities for how these findings could be shared with different audiences, and gave some feedback on early analyses and findings. The Student Advisory Council really narrowed in on 2 areas they wanted to hear from students about, and that was sense of belonging on campus and access to mentorship and support services for students. So that's what this project focuses on and what you'll hear our panelists speak to later today. For PCC, this project has had really important implications for our policy and practice work in terms of some of the needs that students named across interviews. And it also impacts how we work with students and potentially other community stakeholders moving forward. So really excited about those different applications. This project has 2 components that came out of it, a written report synthesizing themes and ideas that emerged in these student interviews and concludes with recommendations for policy and practice for a few different audiences. And then as students brainstormed how they wanted audiences to engage with their work, they also proposed a limited series podcast as one way to uplift their voices and stories directly to different audiences. So each episode of the podcast explores a different set of themes from the report and provides a longer snapshot of some of those student narratives that we heard in interviews. So I'm going to share very briefly some of the key takeaways and emerging themes that came out of these conversations. And later I'll share some of the recommendations. But first were themes related to barriers that students experienced when trying to access support and resources on their college campuses. First, students expressed that a lack of clear or accurate information about campus resources makes it really hard for students to access support that might exist on their campus. Students also talked about how limited office hours and last-minute changes to meeting times can make it really challenging for them to connect. And students also talked about how previous negative experiences asking for help or reaching out for support on campus deterred them from reaching out in that area or even different areas in the future. Students also shared themes related to their needs from advisors and mentors that they engage with on their campuses. Participants talked a lot about needing mentors that meet students where they're at and recognize the circumstances and goals of their students, and also described how the way that they are received in those conversations has a really significant impact on their confidence in pursuing academic and career goals. Students also expressed that they need advisors and mentors with shared identities and experiences, and expressed a need for advising and mentorship that is directly connected to career experiences and fields that they hope to pursue rather than purely academic advising. And then finally, the last sort of bucket of themes was related to the role that other students play in providing access to information and support on campuses. And students talked a lot about how peers helped them connect to resources or spaces on campus and valued the information that other students shared with them. They also talked about how students often fill gaps in communications from institutions, particularly for students of color. And while peer support and leadership opportunities were really important in the college experiences of many students, they also talked about how institutions often rely on the unpaid labor of students of color to fill in these gaps, and that can come at the expense of students' mental health and well-being in a lot of cases. So those were some of the emerging themes that we heard across multiple interviews with multiple students. And our report concludes with some recommendations for institutional leaders, state policymakers, and the partnership, but also other advocacy organizations like PCC. And we call on institutional leaders to empower students as essential decision makers on campus and to invest in programs and interventions that increase the presence and well-being of people of color on campus, including dismantling policies and programs that don't support these goals, and to facilitate opportunities for students to cultivate community with one another. For state policymakers, we include recommendations related to investment in need-based financial aid and distributing state appropriations equitably to ensure that institutions that are serving more students of color, first generation, and low-income students have the resources that they actually need to provide the kinds of robust support that students were saying that they needed and saying helped keep them in college. For PCC, these conversations really underscore the importance of ensuring that our policy and legislative priorities are really not just including student voices, but are driven by student needs and ideas. And the report really emphasizes the importance for developing ongoing rich opportunities for student-led projects and inquiry in the partnership. So really excited to be sharing these materials publicly with people for the first time. We've been working on this project for about a year, and the report and podcast offer a much deeper dive into all of these topic areas and recommendations. So really excited for people on this call to engage in more detail with those materials. But for now, I will pass it over to Krista Brown, who is PCC's student board member and will be moderating our student panel discussion today. So I'll pass it over to Krista.
Hi, everyone. As Caitlin mentioned, my name is Krista Brown, and I am the student board member at PCC, and I'm also a current graduate student at the Harris School of Public Policy. I'll be moderating our panel today, where you'll hear from Sabrina Hart, Febe Frias, and Isabella Hernandez. They are all students who are attending public and private institutions here in Illinois and worked on this project as a part of the Student Advisory Council last year. After our panel discussion, there will be an opportunity for attendees to respond to questions from the audience. We'll be responding to questions from the audience, so drop any questions that you may have in the Q&A feature, which should be at the bottom of your screen. So we'll go ahead and get started with our first question for our students. The first question is, what kinds of resources and supports have been important to you to stay in college?
I would say resources that have been so important and that are required for me to continue to attend Columbia has been financial aid. That's also been my academic advisor, a person of color who I always confide in, especially when I am struggling to get through. I would also say professors who are leaders, who create a space where students feel accepted, seen, acknowledged and wanting to feel that they are wanted in that space.
I'll have to like piggyback what Sabrina said, because that is extremely truthful. Financial aid is such a key component to not only trying to find financial help, but also trying to stay in college, because we don't always have the money ourselves to cover college, and oftentimes the jobs that we have don't cover the thousands of dollars that we owe to stay in higher education as we would like. So we sometimes depend on financial aid. Sometimes they're helpful and sometimes they're not. And something Sabrina said really struck me, which is having professors that truly care and see you. I cannot tell you the amount of professors I've had that are there and they say that they're there, but they don't truly care. They don't show that enthusiasm that I really want to help you succeed and I want to see you do great things. A lot of them are there because they have to be. And so oftentimes when the university is like, you have these resources, you have these people that are here to help you, sometimes they're not really there to help. They're there because they're required to, and that's what they get paid for. Whatever helps them get paid at the end of the day. But I think that those two components are very critical. And I think another thing is, I think it's very critical, is college is very hard. And I think one thing that I wish was offered even more is mental health services, because mental health services are offered in some universities, not all. My university offers it, but it's capped after a certain number of sessions. And so no one can ever, you can't really talk to someone for 5 sessions and expect for the problem to go away, because that's not how seeing a counselor works. It's not how seeing a therapist works. It's consistency. And the moment that you take away that consistency, it's when students begin to feel like their stability is going away. So I think that those 3 are very key components.
I agree very much with Sabrina and Febe. It's a lot of what they said really struck a chord to me, because I feel that way consistently, especially feeling that being a person of color in a small private institution, there's a lot of clickiness and it's very small. Sometimes there's really hard to find a sense of belonging. And oftentimes I really found very helpful for me was me being in the theater department. Networking is very a key component into building a career, and having some faculty really keeps me going and makes me feel very aware of the field that I'm going in, instead of being in a different institution. I feel like I might not get the same one. And especially, I really want to reiterate a lot what Sabrina and Febe said a lot, with feeling that sometimes teachers are paid to be there and not necessarily help. It's the bare minimum of what a professor should be doing. You just go in, you teach, you call it a day. And I've had some faculty members where they kind of went beyond that, and they actually truly were willing to care. It's not because they care, it's because they really want to, and because they see you as a student who wants to see you succeed in life. And that's really something that I truly love, and I try staying for those, being there, because those teachers really back me up. And I feel like if I were to go to a different institution, I might not get the same thing.
That was great. Thank you all for that. I think I heard a couple commonalities, financial aid being one of the big ones, mental health services. But I think what all of you mentioned was a sense of belonging and having people in your corner from the institution and feeling that genuine support from the institution, which is kind of like a perfect segue into our next question. When you think about any helpful mentor or advising relationships you've had, what elements of those relationships have been most impactful for you? And then a second part to this question is, what could those people have done to improve their support for the students they work with?
I'll take this one. I think that a key component when it came to my relationship with my mentor is trust. It's like I'm putting all my trust into you in hopes that you can help me get to where I hope to be. You know, I in the future want to do great things in social work. I want to impact children's lives. I want to do all these wonderful things, but I need a mentor that can help me get there. And I've had a mentor she's been wonderful to me. The trust that she's given me, and the trust I've been able to give her, she's been able to really help me, give me the resources that I need. And she shares in the joy that I share. And that's honestly one of the things that makes me most happy, is knowing that she's proud of me no matter what. If I get an interview and it doesn't work out, she's proud of me that I even got the interview, because like that's a step, right? Sometimes you get in, sometimes you don't. And I think something that I wish that I would get here at the university when it comes to advising, or even trying to find other mentors as well that maybe are, you know, more into the profession than the current mentor I have. It always comes down to they're very distant, they're very cold, or they misguide you. I've had an advisor for the last 3 years who has misguided me in every different direction, and I've taken unnecessary classes, and the stress that I have felt knowing like last minute I had to take 20 credit hours, and then come to find out I just emailed like the department and they're like, oh, you already took classes for this requirement, you're good. And I'm like, I need a mentor who cares enough to know what they're doing, to share in my joy, and to get me to the places that I want to go.
I've had many mentors in my life, and I would say there is a difference between having someone who is present and is ready to show up for you, and someone who is just there, you know, and ready to take the spotlight when you receive rewards and success. It is so important for people, for you to feel that you can be vulnerable with your mentor and them being real with you. You know, sometimes we need to hear what is true instead of hearing what we would like to hear. Sometimes sugarcoating things only keeps us stuck instead of moving forward. I didn't understand at first what mentorship meant until I asked someone and they clarified what that relationship consists of. And with that guidance, I have a better understanding of how to move forward when looking for mentorship and what I should ask of them and what expectations that they have for me. I would say the improvements that I would like to see is people showing up and then not and ghosting you. I you know, like dropping off the earth. You know, I think communication is key. And so if there's a misunderstanding, if we need to set boundaries, let that be known, let that be clear instead of just walking away. You know, we are both professionals, and I respect you, and you should respect me. because my time is equally as valuable as yours. So I just think it's, just that consideration is key.
I also agree a lot with Sabrina said. I also did not really understand what mentorship meant as well. I just kind of, I don't know what I really was expecting about mentorship until I actually found a few faculty members, one of them within my department and two outside of my department. And I've noticed for me that really helped a lot is that they willingly listened to what I have to say. I felt when I had to talk with some faculty members, they were just kind of like, okay, yes, but, or, this and I don't think they really took the time to really hear what I had to say or what students have to say, particularly like students of color. But the ones that I really talked to willingly listened, they've acknowledged and they willingly were trying to help me out. And specifically also what Febe said was true, is it's like the trust in that relationship is also very important. And there's moments where I do like faculty members in my department, I just don't have a lot of trust in them to be doing what I want them to be doing for me. And especially kind of acknowledging my struggles or help me out to succeed as a student. And I really found those very important. And I still try to connect with those teachers who really make me feel at least seen and be willing to watch me grow. Because there's some teachers where as I said, I really do enjoy some faculty members, but I wish that I saw that component of willingness and not just being paid to just be a teacher, listen and move on with your day, because that's what you're paid to do.
Thank you all for that. I think I heard a lot about trust being kind of like the foundation of these mentorship relationships, but then also finding a mentor who cares enough to show up, to communicate, to educate themselves, to be able to guide you or let you know that I don't know how to do this. Let me get you to someone who can help you to avoid wasted time and money. I think Sabrina mentioned this in the first question, having that one mentor on campus or within your department or that one faculty member can help you with that feeling of belonging and feeling supported within your community on your campus. Something that was also mentioned in this report around feeling the sense of belonging, things like that, is peer support. So the next question is, peer support is important, but it's often uncompensated and can be a big responsibility for the students who are balancing the demands of school, work, and life. How can schools foster peer relationships without burning out student leaders and advocates?
Here, I'll take a stab at this one. Peer support is honestly it's something I really love because it makes asking for help a lot easier than asking a professor, faculty member, or administration, anyone. Because I always have trouble asking for help, but knowing I could just ask a peer makes the feeling a little less daunting. But I know a lot of them do this work for free. And just like I'm a student trying to pay for college and work and be able to enjoy life with the money that I earn, I understand that it's the same thing for my peers. Something that I would really like is I really want for peer support for my peers to get paid if they are providing that consistent support to students on campus. Just because it not only taking time away from their academics and work and their personal life, it takes a mental toll too, because you are giving so much of yourself to someone else. And I think it's important that peer support get compensated for that, for one. And two, although universities either have no mental health services or they cap the number of sessions, I would really like if universities are able to somehow provide mental health services free for peer support, and not cap those sessions, because the amount of stress I can only imagine that my peers feel must be really high. It not only having to deal with like midterms and finals and projects, just like we are struggling as students and asking for help, they must be in the same boat, but with this job of having to help others too. So I would really like if A, my peers could get compensated, and B, they are able to receive that mental health support, because burnout is very much real. And I know that every time I have burned myself out, I am at a point where my brain can no longer function and I can't help anyone else. And it's true, like you can't help someone else unless you begin to help yourself. So I think it's important that, these peer support teams have these resources so that they can help themselves, so that in the long run, they're able to have this long lasting relationship with their peers that they're helping.
I very much agree a lot with what Febe said. Especially like paying a lot more for students, because my school, we have like a lot of these peer mentors, especially mental health advocates and especially residential assistants who really kind of focus on helping incoming students into college and offering those informations. We did have like a really good program, but from what I understood, and I have friends who were residential assistants and also peer mentors and advocates, is that they cut the funding. And so residential assistants now are in charge of taking care of 30 students per floor. And it's just one single person. They used to have an assistant, but they cut that out. And I know they created we have a peer mental advocate, but the amount of workload that they do is a lot, with having to create their own schedules of supporting students. And these are great programs, but I agree with Febe, like we need to like more compensation. And I truly believe they should not be cutting those in half, because these students are nursing majors, theater majors, also are student workers on campus who are also have like an exec position in an organization. And so a lot of these are mental toll on them. And I see many of my friends consistently burned out and tired and trying to balance work life while also trying to care for the students. And another thing that I wish was that it's not solely for incoming freshmen. Sometimes a lot of like transfer students who are new or who are upperclassmen don't understand everything. And while I've been here for almost 4 years, I don't know everything. And I wish that there were students for upperclassmen that they could go to and get these resources and understand what they should be doing, and also be able to kind of have that connection instead of having to find a faculty or a staff member to be asking. And not only that, with the barrier for us not feeling as comfortable reaching out to them.
So first I want to share that I believe that peer support starts in the classroom, and I believe that it's the professors that are supposed to make space for those relationships to foster. I took this college news course and got to know my peers even more, because we did group projects or one-on-one like interviews, and I got to know about their dreams, their hopes, their fears. And I think it was like, it's refreshing to know that you're not the only one that is afraid what the future has in store for you. You know, I also believe that when I was starting college, that you need allies, you need people on your side, you need people that are on campus and cheering you on and wanting the best for you. Like, most of the time I go to school and I dread it because it's like none of these people are like, you know, this is not a space where it feels like our growth is encouraged. It's more so like we're in competition rather than we are in a class and these are my peers and we're meant to build off of each other. We are supposed to grow together through this experience, short or long. And so it's up to the professor, it's also up to the school to make sure that these relationships are happening and that no student is alone, because students get lost and they lose sight of their purpose. And so it's important for someone to be there when you're feeling really low. And I agree that there needs to be, as we're supporting other people, we need support too. We just can't keep giving and then there's nothing being returned. And so that's all I have to say.
Thank you guys so much for that. I think I hear that peer support is often more accessible and you feel more comfortable sharing with those peers versus going to like a professor or another resource on campus, because it's someone who has the shared experience of being a student and balancing all of these things, but also that is technically labor and sometimes they're filling in the gaps for the university and they need to be compensated for that, whether it be through like a service like mental health services or actual like funding for that. I'm gonna transition us to our last question. If people want to start dropping questions in the chat after this last question, we'll start taking those questions. But for the students, our last question is, why is it important for students to be involved in campus and policy decision-making?
Answer. It's important because these are our lives and our future. You know, the university wants all these students to come to invest in, you know, their university in hopes that you'll get your degree, but we can't get our degree if all students are struggling financially to get their support, our mental healths are crashing, and the resources that are supposed to help us are not adequately put in place to support us. So I think it's important that, you know, campus and policy, like it's important that we're involved in the process, because while yes, administration and faculty can see it from their point of view, they only see it from like a very small point of view. And to some extent, they'll do what conveniences them in the long run financially as well. But we're the ones living through these hardships. We're the ones experiencing all these things. And it is through us that they will be able to understand how they can better support us and, I guess, nurture our future.
So I attend Columbia, Chicago, and recently my school was on strike. I interviewed some of my peers, and I think it was really hard for them when they were missing classes that they paid for, that they didn't know what the future looked like, because there's teachers weren't there. And we took it upon ourselves to also strike with them, to support them in their time of need. Because not only are they, human beings, but they have to have their needs met too. And so we need to have room for these discussions about what changes need to be implemented to have better results when it comes to moving forward and making decisions that will help or be beneficial for students and professors. And if we don't take part in those conversations and things are just happening and we didn't have a say in them, how do we know that these decisions were made with good intention and are actually for us? Okay.
So we have like students at my school be a part of like certain councils that really do help amplify their voices a lot, which relatively, since my school, I go to Millikan University and we are a pretty small school. So we do have a lot of like, we're primarily known for like our performing arts department, which I'm in. But we have a couple councils within the music department as well as the theater department who are very much sharing their voices, which have been pretty helpful in ways. And we have people within, I believe, the overall like representatives from different departments come together as part of like the administration, which has been very helpful. But some things that which I really enjoy like having people's voices be heard, but sometimes I feel like there's no actual group or representation for primarily people of color, or sometimes the information doesn't go around. We do, but within certain departments, specifically since the music department and the theater department are one of the biggest schools on our campus, sometimes it feels like certain voices like me and other people of color are not necessarily heard. And unless we would have to go to a student, and most of that consists of primarily white students, which isn't a bad thing, but sometimes it's hard for us to kind of advocate for what we feel about. And so sometimes for me, I wish that there's more, within group of like BIPOC students or people of different backgrounds, or however, kind of very much express how they feel. But I mean, it's good. I'm really glad that we do have some type of voice going around, but sometimes it kind of falls on deaf ears when not every single group is aware of what the other people is feeling, specifically since this is a predominantly like white institution. So.
Thank you all so much. I think the big theme here was that decisions are being made for students, so students need to be in the room, and within the individuals in that room, there needs to be representation across different races, ethnicities, etc. I want to thank our panelists again. I am going to transition us to the Q&A portion of the panel. Again, If you have questions, just drop them in the chat. I'll be reading them directly. The first one I'm going to take is from Michael Barber. It says, thanks for sharing so much today, panelists. If you were to make a ballpark estimate, what percentage of your professors consistently cultivate a learning experience for you that is both focused on meaningful work and supports you in feeling that you belong and are supported to succeed? It's also in the chat if you need to read it.
I would say it's a 50-50 chance. It has to be by nature that they are creating this experience. It also has to be within great intention. From the start, entering a classroom, just from the vibes that you get, the way that a professor speaks, and whether or not they are encouraging you to speak up or take part in the conversation. I think that's what it's all about. Not forcing the student to take part, but letting them feel comfortable enough. Just being open-minded and presenting yourself authentically, and letting the objective be known. Like, this is the kind of class that I want to create. And these are the ways that I want to do this. And that's allowing students to know that they are meant to be involved. So it makes a big difference when the conversation allows you to be a part of it, rather than being in the dark.
If I could add in another thing, well, I'd have to agree with Sabrina about the percentage. I think I'm taking 6 classes this semester, which is a lot, but I would say I have 2 out of my 6 professors that are my favorite professors that I have had in all my my entire college education. I have a professor on Mondays from 3 to 6, 3 hours long. And when I looked at the syllabus, I thought, this cannot be 3 hours. I will not last. But the moment I walked into that classroom, and not even 5 minutes in, I knew that I was going to love that class. And every single Monday, I wake up happy knowing that I'm going to go to that class for 3 hours, because she makes learning really fun and she makes me really happy to be there. And her classroom is very interactive. It's, even though there's requirements for you to talk in class, she makes you be happy with talking in class. She makes interacting with other students fun. And I think the last class we were learning about health literacy and the importance of, teaching others about important health communications. And to get us to really focus in, she played the song Dumb Ways to Die. And all of us were just singing, and we had no idea that this song had to do with a health, it was a public health campaign for trains. And so that really got the ballpark rolling for our class. And we ended up breaking out into groups, and we really had meaningful discussions. And I got to talk with people I probably would not have talked to on my own. But thanks to that professor, I was able to branch out a bit more. And so I think I would like if I had more professors like that for my senior year, but I think professors like that is what makes the learning experience all the more important.
I kind of agree a lot with the percentage with Sabrina Febe said. For me, it kind of varies between each semester or year. Sometimes it's like 50-50 with faculty members and just being in the classroom environment, but there's times where I feel like the work is very meaningful as someone, as I mentioned, within theater. My degree consists of like kind of learning different elements and different aspects of theater and what makes theater. And so a lot of the information I've received was like very meaningful and very important and impactful to me. But the biggest thing that I don't feel a lot is the supports that I feel with some teachers. And as I mentioned earlier, not all of my teachers are bad. I'm not saying they're the worst or any of that, anything negative they say about me. It's just that I don't feel the support or the feel that if I were to go with them, I don't feel like I would succeed as compared to when I connected with 2 out of the 3 mentors that I've met in my year in college. 2 of them are not within my program. And so I felt a lot more support and a lot more meaningfulness when I took it. And that was within, one of them was my freshman year of like taking I had to take a literature class, and the teacher was very meaningful, and a lot of his work that we did in class was really impacted the way that I learned things, and I felt support. And another teacher, her work was very meaningful and impactful, and I felt the support and willingness to see me grow. And especially one teacher who is no longer within my department, I felt that way as well. But there's just moments where I wish that I had a lot more support, and I feel consistently isolated in my department, where there's a lot of challenges with being a person of color, going into a field where it's highly competitive, and also there's not many representation like me. But overall, it's a 50-50 chance percentage for me. And as I said, it really depends on the semester and the amount of classes that I'm taking. I'm currently taking 8. I love all my teachers. I think they're great, but I just kind of wish I feel even more seen or supported at the end of the day.
Thank you all for that. For the sake of time, I'm going to wrap us up with one last question from Christy. Charles also dropped a question. Panelists, if as we're closing out, you want to drop your answers in the chat, please feel free to do so. But for our last question, if you could implement one sweeping change in the way universities conduct business, sorry, I just lost it, conduct business with students, what would that be?
I would say transparency. I think that oftentimes when it comes to making big decisions for us, it's often sugar-coated, or this big like facade is put in place. And like the moment that decisions are made for us, we're thinking that one thing is gonna happen. And then they have like a whole, I don't want to use the word vendetta, but they have a whole other motive like behind what we were all thinking was going to happen. So I think one of the things I wish the universities would change when they conduct their business with students is, I guess, better transparency, because these are our lives and we are trying to, succeed and grow, but we can't do that if we're constantly being lied to.
I think what needs to improve is, I think there's times where you feel like you can't, you're stuck in a bond. There's no way. I remember having an amount on my account, on my school account, and I didn't know how I would pay that off. And you know, if I go to someone to speak to about my financial aid and covering this amount, and they have no answers, you know, all they can say to you is, I'm sorry, or, you know, you need to pay this amount before you can move forward into the next semester. And I would say, you know, why not be willing to work with students and trying to figure it out? Why not like have a conversation? Why not share what resources the school has? If it's their job to help you with your financial aid, whether it's guidance or direction, being a support, why can't they help you come up with a plan to attack this bounce instead of just hoping the best for you or just sending you off your way? I took it upon myself to start my own GoFundMe, and that's how I was able to cover the amount. But that was an idea I came up with. I shared my story and hoped that other people would pass this along. But, you know, them just, you know, it being so cut and dry when it comes to money with your future. And the only thing that's holding you back is an amount on your account. Why can't they help you and support you in creating a blueprint or a plan of attack? Okay.
Thank you guys so much for sharing. We are at time, so I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Christian to close us out.
Wow. Wow. Phenomenal. Phenomenal job, panelists. Please, you know, hit those reactions, give the claps if you're on camera. Let's just show some love to our panelists for the immense amount of vulnerability, the insight that they provided. As the title suggests, students know what they need to succeed. And to piggyback off Sabrina's last point, a lot of it is financial. A lot of these issues are solved by economic means. So I'm going to take the liberty a little bit, Caitlin, and kind of go off script here and say, you know, while we have a captive audience, you know, there's a movement taking place in the state of Illinois to equitably and adequately fund public higher education institutions in the state. And if you're interested in leaning in and doing what you can for these students to make sure that they have the resources, that student labor is being paid for, that maybe there is an in the gap fund so students don't have to start a GoFundMe. All of these things need to be considered at a systemic level. And we're just grateful for the students that help illuminate that for us through their vulnerability. So I'm dropping a link in the chat to our coalition where we meet monthly to try to strategize and build power toward the solutions that we believe can help our students here. But please be sure to go to our website, listen to all the podcasts where the students are sharing their perspectives on what it is they need to be successful, and engage with this report deeply and share it. Take the insights back to your areas of influence so that we can keep moving the ball down the field to make sure that Illinois is the best place for any student to get an education that is supported, that is empathetic, and that meets them where they are so that they can be successful. So with that, on behalf of PCC and all the incredible advocates that brought this report to life, we say thank you for coming.